All right, welcome back everybody to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling President-elect Trump's plan to scrap federal tax credits for electric vehicles. And the question is, will this actually slow down the auto industry's electric ambitions? And we've got a really great article from the Telegraph India to help us kind of unpack this whole thing. So I'm really curious to hear what you think about this as we go through it.
Yeah, it's certainly a hot button issue for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the article does a really nice job of outlining the kind of potential ripple effects that this could have, not just on car sales, but on the U.S.'s place in the global EV market.
Yeah, right. So to start off, Trump called these tax credits a green new scam on the campaign trail, and he promised to get rid of them. He's basically claiming that a rapid shift to EVs would only benefit China and make cars more expensive here in the U.S.
And that's a claim that most economists actually disagree with.
Right.
They're saying that instead of boosting the American auto industry, this move could actually hinder innovation.
Right.
And make it harder for U.S. companies to compete with international rivals
Yes.
who are really heavily investing in EVs right now.
Right. And not only that, but he also wants to take the money that's saved from ending these tax credits and put it towards infrastructure projects. So it's like this battle between, funding new technology versus fixing what we already have.
Yeah, for sure. And it begs the question, what is the smarter long-term strategy? Investing in bridges and roads is important, but neglecting the burgeoning EV market, that could have some pretty significant economic consequences down the road, especially as other nations are racing ahead in this sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even though we're seeing more and more EVs on the road, sales haven't exactly skyrocketed like a lot of people predicted. And the article features Jonathan Sheriff, who's an exec at Midway Ford in Miami. And he says that ditching these tax credits would be a huge blow to sales. They made a big difference in making EVs more affordable and comparable in price to gasoline cars.
And I think that affordability factor is key.
Yeah.
Sheriff actually calculated that the $7,500 tax credit could lower those monthly payments for people by like $200 to $250. And that's a significant chunk of change for a lot of people, especially when you consider that EVs are already, pricier than gas-powered vehicles.
Yeah, he's not kidding. Cox Automotive found that the average EV costs about $9,000 more than a comparable gasoline car. So that credit really helps bridge the gap.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's an interesting wrinkle to these tax credits when it comes to, where those EVs are made and what goes into them. So to qualify for the full $7,500, the car has to be assembled in North America. And if the battery parts or even the minerals that are used in those batteries, if they come from China or any country that's considered a threat to the U.S., economically or security-wise, then that EV is only eligible for half the credit.
Wow, so are you telling me that most of the EVs on the market right now don't even qualify for the full tax credit?
Well, the article actually states that most of the 75 EV models that are currently sold in the U.S. don't actually qualify for the full amount.
Yeah.
Because of this rule about sourcing those battery materials.
It makes you think about how, intertwined these global supply chains are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complex issue. Because there's this push to encourage domestic manufacturing and reduce our reliance on certain nations. But at the same time, those restrictions can make producing EVs in the U.S. more expensive, which could, potentially slow down that transition to electric transportation.
Okay, so what about leasing? I heard that there was like a loophole with the tax credits when you lease an EV.
Right. So currently, all EVs can actually get the full $7,500 credit when leased, regardless of, where they're made or where those battery materials come from. It's a benefit that Trump might try to eliminate.
Okay, so on top of all of this, Trump's been talking about using something called impoundment to do away with the credits altogether, which is this theory that suggests that presidents can choose not to spend money that Congress has already approved.
Yeah, but hold on a second, though. There's debate about whether impoundment would even apply in this situation. John Helveston, who teaches at George Washington University and knows a lot about EV policy, he thinks it's a long shot. He argues the tax credits affect government revenue, not spending. So they might fall outside the scope of what a president can just unilaterally change.
And Helveston also points out that it might be kind of difficult for Trump to convince Republican lawmakers to go along with, scrapping the tax credits because a lot of their districts actually benefit economically from these credits. So it could create quite a political headache for the administration.
Yeah, and to make things even more complicated,
Yeah.
there's a law from 1974 that prevents presidents from just single-handedly making changes to spending programs. So if Trump does try to go down this road, his move could face some serious legal challenges.
Wow, so it's shaping up to be quite the battle. So let's talk about what all of this could mean for the American auto industry. The big three, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, they're doing okay overall, but they're actually losing money on their electric vehicles right now.
Yeah, and that's a sharp contrast to Tesla, the current leader in U.S. EV sales,
Mhm.
which is making a profit on its electric cars. But the thing is, those federal subsidies, which include the tax credits and the funding to help car companies retool their factories to build EVs, they're playing a huge role in helping the traditional U.S. automakers transition away from gas-powered vehicles.
Right. And Sam Fiorani, who's a VP at Auto Forecast Solutions, makes a really good point. He says that these subsidies are critical for Detroit to stay competitive, especially with foreign companies like those in China that got a head start and benefited from a lot of government support early on.
Right, and if those tax credits go away,
Mhm.
it could be a big setback for U.S. automakers, particularly in that global EV market. They find themselves struggling to keep pace with international players who are heavily invested in electric vehicles.
So are you saying that if those tax credits vanish, the future of the American auto industry is doomed?
Not necessarily. What's interesting is that even with all this uncertainty surrounding the tax credits, the article highlights that most automakers are still fully committed to their EV plans.
So they're all in on electric even if the government pulls support.
Yeah, it seems that way. In fact, David Kriest, a VP at Toyota North America, he even said, "We plan for the long term, so political considerations aren't a factor in how we approach product development or capital investments."
Wow, that's quite a statement. So what do you make of that?
Well, I think it reflects a growing consensus that the shift to electric vehicles is inevitable. Government policies can certainly influence the pace of change, but the momentum seems unstoppable.
So it sounds like we've covered a lot of ground already. So before we get into the potential impacts of all of this, let's take a minute to gather our thoughts.
Yeah, this whole debate over EV tax credits really underscores this intense competition that's happening on a global scale. It's like every major country is vying for a slice of that electric vehicle pie.
Right. Yeah, it's like a high-stakes race where the rules keep changing.
Exactly. And government policies like these tax credits are powerful tools that can really determine who takes the lead and who falls behind in this EV market.
Yeah, it makes you realize that this isn't just about, saving a few bucks on a new car. It's about the future of transportation and where the U.S. stands in that, global landscape.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the big question. Will Trump's push to eliminate these EV tax credits actually succeed? The article explores a few different scenarios, but the truth is, the outcome is still anyone's guess.
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty. Predicting the future of the EV market is about as reliable as predicting the weather sometimes.
Yeah, it's a fascinating puzzle with a lot of moving pieces. But even with all this uncertainty, what I find remarkable is the resilience of those automakers. They seem determined to forge ahead with their EV plans, regardless of what happens with the tax credits.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying, bring on the challenge.
Exactly. And that unwavering commitment to electric vehicles is what makes this whole situation so compelling.
For sure. So this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. What stands out to you as the most surprising takeaway so far?
What really strikes me is how this issue highlights this complex interplay between government policies, economic forces, and technological advancements. It's a reminder that we're living in a time of unprecedented change. And the decisions we make today about EVs will have a ripple effect for years to come.
Yeah, it's not just about cars anymore. It's about our economy, our environment, and how we envision the future of transportation. It's bigger than any one policy or any one company.
Right. You're right. It's about creating a sustainable future and ensuring that America remains a leader in this transition to cleaner transportation. And that's something that should matter to all of us, whether or not we're in the market for an electric car.
Right. So what does this all mean for our listener who's tuning in today?
Well, it means that staying informed and engaged in this conversation is crucial. We need to understand the complexities, weigh the different perspectives, and demand solutions that are both innovative and sustainable. The choices we make today will shape the world we live in tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that we're not just passengers in this EV revolution. We have a role to play in steering it in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's a call to action for all of us.
I think that's a great place to pause for a moment and collect our thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay, so we're back, ready to kind of wrap up our deep dive into this whole EV tax credit saga. It's been quite the journey, unpacking all these different angles of this issue.
It really has. I think it highlights just how complex this transition to a more electric transportation future is going to be. There's so many factors at play. from government policies to, technological advancements to global market dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do a really quick recap for our listener, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So we started by looking at President-elect Trump's plan to eliminate those federal tax credits for EV buyers. He called them a scam, and he wants to take that money and put it towards, more traditional infrastructure projects like roads and bridges. Right. And we also talked about how ending those tax credits could potentially slow down EV sales, even though adoption rates have been a bit slower than initially predicted. And plus, there are those political and legal obstacles that Trump might face if he actually tries to, make this happen.
Right. And we can't forget about that potential impact on the U.S. auto industry. Those big three in Detroit are really relying on federal subsidies, including those tax credits to help them, shift away from gas-powered vehicles and ramp up that EV production. Taking away that support could make it much tougher for them to compete with those international rivals, especially those companies in China that have a head start in the EV market.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. The future of the U.S. auto industry is very much tied to its ability to adapt and thrive in this new EV landscape. If American companies fall behind it, could have significant economic consequences.
But, even with all this uncertainty and potential turmoil, what really struck me is that most automakers seem determined to stay the course when it comes to their EV plans. They're not backing down, even if the government changes the rules of the game.
Yeah, their commitment to electrification is pretty remarkable. It shows that they understand this shift is happening, and the companies that embrace it are going to be the ones who define the future of transportation.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway that you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the electric vehicle revolution is here, and it's not going away. But the path forward is far from certain. Government policies, technological advancements, consumer demand, they're all going to shape how this revolution unfolds, and staying informed and engaged is more important than ever.
That's a great point. Now, I have one final thought to leave our listener with. So let's imagine for a moment that Trump succeeds in eliminating those EV tax credits. What happens next? Can the U.S. still maintain its position in this global EV race? Or will it fall behind ceding leadership to other countries that are doubling down on electric mobility? It's a question worth pondering as we watch the story continue to unfold.
It certainly is. It reminds us that the decisions we make today will have a lasting impact on the future of transportation and the global economy.
Well, thanks for diving into this with me. And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this exploration of this EV tax credit conundrum. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a bit thought-provoking. Until next time, stay curious.